Okay, so this is our last lecture on deceased estates. Our first video, we discussed the introduction to deceased estates. The second video, we explored on the types of beneficiaries. And now we are now digging deep into how we tax a deceased estate. Uh, uh, so, as I said earlier, we are exploring the taxation of income received by a deceased estate, which we call the post-death period. An individual's employment may give rise to income which is taxable in either pre-death or post-death. Let's say an individual was employed and that individual died at 30 June mid-year. Okay, so we have two tax periods here. We have what we call the pre-death tax period and also what we call the post-death tax period. So the pre-death tax period will be from 1 January to 30 June when the individual died. Then the post-death period will be from 1 July to 31 December after the death of the deceased person up to until the end of the tax year. So that income might be taxable, but sometimes it might not be taxable. So we are going to explore a situation where that income is taxable and also a situation where that income is actually not taxable. So the first thing that we are going to deal with is income which accrued to during the pre-death period. So in this case, we are saying before the person died, that income had actually accrued to him, like maybe we can say director's fees. The deceased had already signed for the director's fees, or maybe it actually whatever fees or whatever income it actually accrued to the deceased. Maybe another example is bonus. Maybe the bonus was actually signed for in April, and the deceased is it actually attained the key performance indicators, the KPIs, and it was just a matter of time before the bonus is actually paid to the deceased. And then it happens that the person dies before the bonus is paid to him. So that bonus, we say it actually accrued to the deceased person before his death. So in this case, we are going to tax the bonus or whatever income that accrued before the death in the tax assessment to death. So that was the example that we say, e.g. salary earned, bonus, and director's fees already voted at date of death, contractual, whatever contractual commission accrued to date of death. Then another scenario is where we are saying the amounts accrued to the individual or the accrued to the deceased estate after the death of the individual. So in this case, we are saying if the deceased person was still alive, this income was going to be taxed in his hands. But before his death, this income had not yet accrued to him, but the individual had the right to that income. Like cash in lieu of leave. Of course, it had not accrued him, but had actually the right to that cash in lieu of leave. So in that case, who do we tax? We tax the estate. E.g., we said cash in lieu of leave, bonus, and director's fees voted after death, where So we are saying maybe we have bonuses, maybe we have cash in lieu of leave, maybe we have director's fees that the deceased person had right to those, but it had not yet accrued him before his death. The third scenario, we are saying income accrued post-death and deceased had no right to the income. So this is the scenario where we don't tax anything because before the death, the deceased had no rights to that income. And now that income is now accruing after the death of the deceased. An example would be maybe ex gratia payments, where the company that was employing that deceased person now saying, we're going to pay 10,000 to his son. That one is a typical example of any of income that accrues to post death period, but the deceased had no rights over the income. Another good example is cash in lieu of leave for civil servants, which is considered a privilege, not a right, or any ex gratia awards. Okay, let's explore on the tax credits that are available. So the deceased estate does not rank for any credits. You know that credits, we only allow credits to natural persons. So a deceased estate is not a natural person, so there are no credits. What about medical expenses? Any medical expenses paid during the post-death period is allowed as a credit to date of death. Relief is granted on foreign interest and foreign dividend if estate is ordinary resident in Zimbabwe. What about the tax rates? Uh, so the general principle says the source of the income determines the rate of tax to be applied. So if it is investment income, we know that in 2021, from 2020, the rate was revised to 24% plus AIDS levy. If it is employment income, then we just apply the tax tables. What about the lump sum payments from death benefit? Maybe the individuals are contributing to a certain pension fund, but now because the individual is now deceased, the pension fund is saying is paying all the contributions. How do we tax that lump sum payment? So lump sum receipts from a pension fund or retirement annuity fund accruing upon death of a member in terms of the rules of the funds are deemed to accrue to the member prior to his death. However, they are not taxable. Why? Because this is not a withdrawal by the member but a refund of pension contributions. So this one is a capital in nature, so it's not taxable. However, where a pension annuity is paid to a surviving spouse or dependents of the deceased, the annuity is taxable in the hands of the recipient. We already discussed about the residence of an estate. Simple. If the deceased was ordinary resident in Zimbabwe at the time of his death, then the estate shall be treated as ordinary resident in Zimbabwe. This is in terms of Section 12, subsection 2 of the Income Tax Act. Interest and combined dividends from a foreign source is taxable in Zimbabwe if at the time of accrual the deceased estate was ordinary resident in Zimbabwe. What about expenditure incurred in the post-death and assessed loss? How do we treat those expenditure and assessed loss that are arising after the death of the individual or to a deceased estate? Expenditure incurred by the executor or trustees is generally allowable in determining taxable income in the hands of the appropriate party. If the expenditure is allowable under the general deduction formula, it will also be allowable to the estate or to the beneficiary, but those expenditures that are not administrative in nature, they are disallowed in the determination of taxable income of the party concerned. Any losses of the deceased lapses at the date of death. Okay, so maybe the date of death was 30 June and the individual had an assessed loss. So that assessed loss is reduced to zero on the date of death. So we have these scenarios again where we have a marriage out of community of property. That means each party owns property registered in their own name. The husband has got his own property. The wife has got her own property. That's what we mean by marriage out of community of property. So what are the tax implications? The assets of the surviving spouse do not form part of the deceased estate, of course, because they had separate assets. The survivor is taxed on her own income separately, and also the survivor is going to be taxed on whatever part of income that will be received from the deceased estate. Okay, the opposite scenario is a marriage in community of property. The opposite is exactly the same. We call it antenuptial clause, where property is jointly owned. So what we do, we will strike the property 50-50%. So the first 50 will not form part of the deceased estate, but the second 50% will form part of the deceased estate. So the surviving partner will be taxed on his 50%, which does not form part of the deceased estate, and also whatever share that she is going to receive or is going to receive from the deceased estate. So other issues, those are displayed on the slide. We have the first issue, disposal of a specified asset of a deceased estate is exempt. For CGT purposes, it's exempt. And no capital allowances are granted to a deceased estate. Therefore, we do not have any recoupment. Now let's explore a question. So the question, Mr. Moyo died on 31 July 2013. His will bequeathed 50,000 cash at Stanbic to his father and a block of flats to his only child, Tanyarazo. His personal effects were shared amongst his brothers as per the family custom. He left the rest of his investments to his wife. The investments included shares in CBZ Limited worth 1 million. His salary to date of death was 35,000. Pay on that salary was 14,700. After his death, the estate paid medical bills amounting to 2,900. Net rentals of 1,200 were received from 1 January 2013 until the time of his death. So, in this scenario, we want to identify who is going to be taxed on what. So this is the solution. So for the pre-death period, we are going to tax Mr. X on the salary, of course, and also on the net rentals that accrued to him before his death. And also, we are going to grant him the credit, medical aid credit. In the hands of the estate, we are going to tax the estate any income accruing from the rest of investments The residual of estate bequeathed to the wife are taxable in the hands of the estate from the day after death until when the estate is dissolved. What about the hands of the father? Remember that the father was given 40,000 cash. It was 50,000 cash. This one is tax-free. Inheritances are tax-free unless they take form of an annuity. It is income from the inheritance that is taxable from a day after the death of the deceased. What about in the hands of Tanyaraza? Taxed on the net rentals receipts from the day after the death will continue to be taxed on the rentals even after the clearance of the estate. What about the surviving spouse? Taxed on the income from the residue only from 1 April 2014 after clearance of the estate. What about the personal effects? Not taxable. Okay, that is the end of the deceased estates. Thank you for your time. Bye bye.